So, one of the things I talk about here on the channel all the time is that the month of July can provide fireworks on the recruiting trail, and no team in college football captured the month of July quite like Mike Norvell and the Florida State Seminoles, getting major wins that have extended into the month of August, something we've got to talk about. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, give me a Y for yes or an N for no, and given that Florida State currently sits as a top 5 recruiting class per 24/7 Sports, do you believe that the Seminoles will finish out the year as a top 5 recruiting class in college football? Can't wait to hear from you. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below, as those interactions seem small, they are massive. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And where do we want to begin? Whenever we take a look at this, Mike Norvell and company got a dozen wins. So much to be excited about, but I think the best way to handle this is to start with the newest addition first, being 5-star safety KJ Bolden. And there's no shortage of excitement around this win from Florida State fans, and for good reason. Whenever we start diving into why this is such a great addition, there are so many reasons. First and foremost, the athletic ability he brings to the table. I don't think there's anybody out there that would be surprised if they heard that he decided to enroll early and was competing for starting snaps. He has that athletic ability, and it makes complete sense when we look at the teams that were hot on the trail after the 5-star safety, being Georgia, Florida State, Auburn, Alabama, and Ohio State, teams that recruit at the highest order of college football. And especially whenever you realize that Florida State walked into the state of Georgia, pulled KJ Bolden right out of their backyard. And even though that's impressive, we need to dive deeper into the nuance to understand why that's so impressive. Because just a year ago, Georgia had the #1 safety in the nation, Caleb Downs, choose to leave the state to go play his college football in Alabama for the Crimson Tide. If you're Kirby Smart and the Dogs, already you're like, okay, not great, but we have another 5-star safety in next year's class. Caleb Downs, we would have loved to have had him be a part of this program. We'll turn our attention to KJ Bolden. Now KJ Bolden is walking out of the state. This is a guy that the Bulldogs were full court pressing, and still Mike Norvell and company came out victorious, and that has got to be exciting, especially when we talk about the expectations around Florida State on the football field this year, where they're coming off of one of their best years in recent memory. There's a lot to be excited about. But KJ Bolden was not the only 5-star defensive back that Norvell and company landed, far from it. We can also turn our attention to Charles Lester, and this was a really fun recruiting battle to keep up with. Because I'm sure, if Florida State fans are honest, there will be some of you that can comment down below and admit you may have been a little bit nervous whenever Charles Lester visited Colorado. Maybe you thought it was a long shot that Coach Prime was able to get in Charles Lester and get him to commit to the Buffaloes, but at the very least, entertain the idea that he's done it before. He did it with Travis Hunter, who was a Florida State commit, and then he did it with Kermani McClain. So it's not out the realm of possibility that Coach Prime can get a 5-star defensive back to go visit wherever he's coaching and get them to commit. We've seen it happen twice now, and many in the Florida State fan base were hoping this would not be a three-peat. However, Charles Lester ends up with Florida State, and this is one of those situations I have no doubt Norvell and company will continue recruiting Charles Lester until ink hits paper, because there are going to be several schools after him because of how gifted he is. He's one of these modern-day defensive backs that has the ranginess in terms of his size, but doesn't diminish any of the athletic ability. That's exactly what colleges are looking for. He's got the ability. He's a 5-star, and he's in the state of Florida. So if you are Florida State, you love that you get to keep him home. And we can continue down this list. A win Florida State got that, in my opinion, flew a little bit under the radar was flipping 4-star offensive tackle Manasseh ITT from USC to Florida State. Now, if we look at the 24/7 Sports composite, ITT comes just outside the top 300 prospects, sitting at like 331 in the nation. But it's interesting to note, and I think important to note, that if you look at 24/7 Sports rankings themselves, he's a top 150 prospect. Now, I turn your attention to that for good reason, because this is a guy that hasn't played the game of football for very long, and already is considered a blue chip prospect. This is a dude that's still learning. In my opinion, he's going to be much better at the end of his senior year than he was at the end of his junior year. And yes, we can say that about several prospects out there, especially for a guy that just hasn't been around the game of football for very long. He came to the United States in order to try and pursue basketball and ended up finding out he excelled at football. This is a very athletic individual, a very high upside, and a lot of room still to grow. And personally, I think that's exciting. I'm really interested to see how his senior year goes, because I wouldn't be surprised at all at the end of his senior year, whenever February gets here and we're taking a look at how these guys finished out in the recruiting rankings, we realize Manasseh ITT finishes in the composite around where 24/7 Sports has him ranked, in that 150 range. I truly believe he is that good. 6'5", 290 pounds. This is one you've got to be excited about. But sticking to the trenches, another win that I really liked that Florida State got was D.D. Holmes on the defensive line. Because one thing we have to understand, though the offensive linemen and the defensive linemen, they're not going to grab headlines like a quarterback, like a wide receiver, like a KJ Bolden, they are necessary. Football games are won and lost in the trenches, and it's awesome to see Norvell and company paying attention to the trenches on both sides, because D.D. Holmes is a massive individual. And this class, the class of 2024, is a phenomenal time to go out and find defensive line talent, because there's so much of it. This is a guy that stands 6'6", 250 pounds, from Washington, D.C., where he plays in their very prestigious football leagues up there for Gonzaga, where, oh yeah, by the way, Caleb Williams, that's where he went. And if you don't know the football divisions they have up there, they rival the Trinity Leagues out there in California. That's how serious they are. And one thing I talk about all the time, whenever you get a guy from leagues like this, from a modern day, from an IMG, they're battle tested. And though there's no way to guarantee that they'll translate, in theory, you like their ability to translate even more, because you know they've been practicing against and playing against guys that will be playing college football on Saturdays, meaning they've seen talented players, they've handled talented players, they're used to the competition, in theory at least. Being able to get a 6'6", 250-pound defensive lineman has got to be a great win, especially when we look and realize he's a 4-star top 300 player in the nation. So what does this all mean for Florida State? And one thing we even have to add in here, they might not be done yet being a thorn in the side of Georgia, as there is another player from Buford who could be flipping from Georgia to Florida State, something we're going to have to wait and watch for, but definitely worth noting. What does this all mean for Florida State? Well, it puts them exactly where Mike Norvell and company wants them heading into the football season. Football season right around the corner. Florida State currently has 22 prospects in the 2024 class, meaning they can turn their full attention to the season. They can be very selective with the remaining scholarships they have and really zone in on a few guys. That, to me, is an intriguing position to be. And there's no right or wrong way to college football recruiting. We've had conversations before about if you have a class of 15 guys heading into August, no need to worry, you have your foundation and you have room to continue adding. There's no right or wrong way, but I do think there is something to being able to get in these wins, sustain these wins, and keep being a thorn in the side of programs like a Georgia. Being able to go into a high school like Buford that consistently pumps out these top-tier prospects and get a win like they did for KJ Bolden, that means something. My biggest question right now for Florida State is what happens next? What are you able to do with all the momentum you have going into this season? What are you able to do in the ACC, and what are you able to do on the recruiting trail? Questions I'm really interested in hearing from all of you about. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking about this. I know we only went over a few guys, but if we really wanted to do a deep dive into all the wins Florida State got in the month of July, we'd be here for an hour and a half, and maybe we might just have to do that. But for right now, know this. No team in college football captured the month of July quite like Florida State did, and Mike Norvell and company look to continue that momentum. Can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See you.